Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight on ABC News, we'll be interviewing Major Alice Ross King, a brave nurse who served in World War I and II. Over to Poppy.
Thanks, Penelope. So, Alice, how are you today?
I'm very well, thanks. What about you?
I'm feeling great. Okay, so tell us about your early childhood.
Well, Poppy, I was born on the 5th of August 1887 in Victoria, Ballarat. My family and I moved to Perth when I was very young, and sadly, both my father and two brothers died in an accident in Swan River. After this traumatic experience, my mother and I moved to Melbourne. A few years later, I was educated at a small academy known as the Academy of Mary Immaculate, and after that, I was moved to the Presbyterian Ladies' College.
I see, and I'm very sorry to hear about your brother and your father. It must have been very sad. Well, whilst we're on the sad subject, when did you pass away?
After a long life of war and nursing, I died just after the Second World War on the 17th of August 1968. I was buried in the Presbyterian section of the Fawkner Cemetery, which is located in Melbourne.
So when did you become a nurse?
I gained my certificate as a nurse around the time that I was working with the Alfred Hospital in Melbourne. Here I was helping the other staff members with a disease called the epidemic typhus, and I stayed here to begin my nursing training. This disease was either caused by a cat flea or a rat flea, and was very common throughout war due to the rats in the trenches.
When and why did you enlist as a nurse in World War I?
I enlisted as a nurse on the 5th of November 1914 with the Australian Army Nursing Service. After seeing both my father and two brothers die so suddenly, I wanted to help as many people as I could and try to restrict the amount of grief for others.
When did you stop serving as a nurse?
I stopped serving as a nurse just after World War II. I actually served in both wars because I enjoyed aiding others, although it was such an emotional ride.
Wow, serving in both world wars, that's quite an achievement. How many different hospitals did you work with in World War I?
Well, after I worked with the AANS, I embarked to Egypt to operate at the 1st Australian General Hospital. Later on down the track, I went to Rouen, and there I was still working with the 1st Australian General Hospital. Then I found myself in St. Omer with the 10th Stationary Hospital, and finally, I operated with the 2nd Casualty Clearing Station in Armitaires.
What was it like serving as a nurse in the war?
Tending to most men that came through was extremely tough due to the fact that most poor men died. It was also miserable as we knew we would see most men again after we sent them back to no man's land. Some days I would feel very depressed and miserable, and others I would just feel empty. The last post played almost all day at the cemetery next door to the hospital. Saying goodbye to the men who were so good to me was incredibly sad, and sometimes I didn't even get to say goodbye. When the Second World War began, I turned 52. It began to be quite difficult to help the men in such a quick manner, as I was getting old and frail. However, I managed to stick it out until that horrific war ended, and I died peacefully after.
I hear that you were awarded with the Military Medal during First World War. Why did you receive this astonishing award?
Well, on the 17th of July 1917, I was sent to the 2nd Casualty Clearing Station in Armitaires, which is near France. I was located very close to the trenches, which was terribly scary. Anyway, on the 22nd of July 1917, the hospital was bombed by German aircraft. Myself and three other nurses ran to rescue as many as we could. We either carried them to safety or we placed tables over their beds in order to protect them. The first bomb actually fell right in front of me, and the horror and massacre that followed was unforgettable. So the four of us won the military medal due to our bravery during the bombing near Armitaires.
I see. This must have been such a traumatic experience. Well, did you receive any other significant awards?
On the 18th of November 1918, I remember that I was sent to Rouen to go to the 1st Australian General Hospital. Then on Christmas Day, I was mentioned in dispatches and was gratefully awarded the Associate Royal Red Cross on the 31st of May 1918. Further down the track, the Voluntary Aid Detachments had advanced into the Australian Army Women's Medical Services. Here, I was commissioned as a major and was selected as a Senior Assistant Controller for Victoria in 1942. And finally, in 1949, I was awarded the Florence Nightingale Medal by the International Red Cross. This was such a big achievement in my life, as only 36 nurses from 18 countries have received this. The Florence Nightingale Award is specifically handed to nurses who reflect exceptional courage and devotion to victims of natural disasters or conflict.
Wow, that's absolutely fantastic. Now, the last question that I wanted to ask you was, how did the war affect you personally?
Well, after the First World War and my experiences being a nurse, I became a very quiet and private person. Ask my family, they know plenty about that. Anyways, like many who served in the war, I was emotionally distressed. I still don't like talking about my experiences and struggle thinking about them. Them meaning the poor men who suffered horrible diseases and injuries, and the other many who had to be sent back to the firing line. I used to have dreams that would jolt me from my sleep, and some days I would simply have no sleep at all.
Well, that's all the questions for today, Alice. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Stay tuned for more interviews after the break.